First of all, thank you for the invitation to participate in the annual meeting. It's really a pleasure to be part of this discussion. Being able also to provide the perspective of an independent researcher in these debates. I'm working at the Center for European Policy Studies. I've been there for several years, more than 10 years, doing research, independent analysis on the impact of EU policies on fundamental rights, civil liberties of people. And, of course, when they gave the title of the presentation was given to me, Human Rights at the Heart of Europe, ? I was very interested and tempted to address this question also from the perspective of the research we've been carrying out, also for the European Parliament, for this House, backing up some of the work, legislative work at the LIBE Committee. Fundamental rights, I mean, when we talk about values, what are those values about? From the perspective of fundamental rights, the position I would like to bring in my presentation is that they are core legal principles. They are at the core of European integration. They've been at the heart of the origins of Europe. And it's not only values. They are there for governments as well to respect and guarantee in the relationship with the individual. So in cases where there are alleged fundamental rights violations, the individual is holder of those fundamental rights to keep governments accountable and in this delivery of those principles which are so important. And at European Union level, we've seen since the Lisbon Treaty at the end of 2009, fundamental rights have been put at the core of the European Union edifice. We have a legally binding EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, the first time a Bill of Rights, a supranational Bill of Rights for EU citizens and residents, which also applies to European institutions when they legislate and take decisions. Behind the discussions of today, and also to a certain extent at European Union level, there are some presumptions, some assumptions upon which the Union has been built. The first one is that all Member States comply with fundamental rights, that after accession all EU Member States comply with fundamental rights. We've heard in previous discussion that before accession, any candidate country needs to comply with the so-called Copenhagen criteria, which are particularly focused on assessing rule of law, fundamental rights and democratic principles compliance. But after accession, there is nothing similar. And I wonder, and I would like to address this issue with you today. Is that the case? Is that the case that after accession this is not such an issue? And the second presumption is when we talk about citizens. We are on the European Year of the Citizens. Who are those citizens? Who are those people? Are they only the nationals of EU Member States? Or are we looking at a wider group of individuals from the perspective of the EU Charter? So coming to the first presumption, that Member States comply with fundamental human rights, well, we've seen how contested that issue is, not only from political interventions at EU level, but also research has demonstrated that actually we cannot take for granted fundamental rights inside the European Union. We've seen cases, for instance, in France, with expulsion of Romanian and Bulgarian Roma minorities, the crisis which are still ongoing. We see pushbacks of asylum seekers in the Mediterranean to North Africa. We see issues of independence of the judiciary in countries like Hungary and Romania, not least the recent revelations of PRISM and the NSA scandal, some EU Member States cooperating with US authorities having also their own surveillance programmes, such as in the UK, Sweden and other Member States. These are only a few examples, the more known examples, of fundamental rights, what Commissioner Reding has labelled, I think appropriately, rule of law crises. And there is not a clear answer under the current treaties, apparently for the Commission and other European institutions to react to these dilemmas. What we've seen is every time DG Justice of the European Commission comes to a government and says to France, for example, you shouldn't expel Roma because they are EU citizens and as such they are entitled to equality of treatment, the national governments immediately go to the subsidiarity discourse and say, oh, the Commission has no competence, this is national competence, thank you very much. And the Commission shouldn't do this because it has no competence. It is a very tricky debate, indeed, but as a matter of fact, the European Union is already a fundamental rights and rule of law actor, and Member States have acquired a number of commitments throughout the years, not only after Lisbon, but previous Lisbon Treaty, as regards compliance with fundamental rights, and they need to comply with those obligations. However, what we can see now is that the European Union is facing still this challenge, how to ensure that after accession we can guarantee Member States' compliance with these principles, what to do. At the Centre for European Policy Studies we have done research on this issue, how to strengthen the European Union's role in better guaranteeing democracy, fundamental rights and rule of law, not only at national level, when talking about Member State national governance, but also at European level. This is also an issue of European institutions to tackle. And there are a number of treaty-based instruments and policy mechanisms which are already functioning at the moment, which could be used more effectively to address this kind of crises. And perhaps this hasn't been the case until now. At CEPS we have proposed that the Commission should perhaps monitor more closely and supervise more closely what Member States are doing in respect of fundamental rights compliance in a number of policies, and perhaps develop new mechanisms monitoring and evaluating those principles as values, as core values of, in principle, that the European Union is based on. And the European Parliament, of course, is a key actor here. After Lisbon, the European Parliament has become co-legislator in many policy areas that I have mentioned before, in the so-called area of freedom, security and justice. Most of these policies, as you are well aware, laying at the core of national sovereignty, questions of migration, questions of judicial criminal justice, questions of mobility and freedom of movements of people. The Parliament is co-legislator in these areas. And we have seen how the Commission and the Council have perhaps not fully internalised this new role of the European Parliament in bringing democratic accountability in the development of EU policies, which until quite recently was not the case. It was mainly executive and Commission driven. And one of the challenges that the Parliament has confronted since this new role of co-legislature is a quite misleading framing of fundamental rights. There is a tendency also in this House to understand fundamental rights as left-wing. When someone speaks of fundamental rights, rule of law, proportionality, immediately the label is, oh, this is a left-wing ideological take on policy making, and I think this is absolutely wrong. Fundamental rights are at the core of the treaty framework that we have. The European Parliament has been entrusted to make or to ensure that both the Commission, the European Commission and the Council are accountable, and that they comply also with fundamental rights at the EU level when legislating and when doing decision making, and has nothing to do with ideology. Of course, fundamental rights are inherent to politics, but not to certain ideological political tendencies. So it is at the heart, democratic accountability, as well as Europe's value. It has to be. And we see how people across Europe are calling for more legitimacy on what Europe is doing, and more scrutiny in decision-making processes, because they are increasingly aware that what is going on here in Brussels has a direct impact on their lives. And this will only increase. Not only the economic crisis. I have mentioned issues of freedom, security and justice, data protection, presumption of innocence, mobility-related rights and freedoms. This will become more to become more issues of concern, because people will see that decisions also taken here in this House affect their daily lives. But how are those decisions taken is indeed a different issue. And for the next legislature and also the European elections is a perfect moment to remind everyone about the role of democratic accountability from the principle of separation of powers. This was also mentioned by a previous speaker, how important equilibrium, institutional equilibrium and accountability of decision making is to ensure the legitimacy of the decisions being taken. And people is not only about informing about your rights. Of course, that's very important. That's indeed very important, but it needs to take a step further also. What does it bring? How can I have access to those rights? What is the value added of those rights? How can I ensure, or how can European institutions also ensure that policies are indeed the so-called evidence-based policy making, that they are indeed needed, that they are indeed bringing something, addressing an actual challenge by individuals in the ground, not by other actors. So I think that it is important in the next upcoming elections to pass a clear message, both at EU and national levels, that rule of law, democracy, fundamental rights, the three together, you cannot have one without the other, are actually at the heart of EU's values. And those values apply especially to our authorities, to our national governments, and to European institutions as well. The second presumption, who are those citizens? We talk about the European Year of the Citizen, and there is a tendency to understand that category as very exclusionary category. It's only the nationals of member states. Well, that's not true. I mean, if you look at the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, there are many rights there which apply to everyone in Europe. Every resident in Europe is entitled to fundamental human rights, and some of those fundamental human rights are citizenship rights. And this needs also to be communicated. We see a lot of xenophobic, discriminatory tendencies and discourses across Europe, not only from extreme right political parties, across the spectrum in political parties. We see anti-immigration discourses and rhetoric which is indeed non-evidence-based. The example of social welfare tourism has been mentioned. We've done also a book on this, which shows precisely this. I mean, there is no evidence whatsoever backing up issues of migration, tourism, and abuses of social welfare and things like that. So we can be led by irrational political discourses, or Europe can actually play a role in saying we need informed discourses here. We need informed debates on what is actually going on what is needed. And clearly, this Europe of citizens, the Charter, coming back to the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, it is absolutely fundamental for people, this Charter. And we've seen that it's been increasingly used at national and European level. But it has transformed, this Charter, fundamentally, the relationship between the individual and the state. Because now you do have a supranational Bill of Rights, which is actually entrusted to supranational also institutions, including courts, which keep governments also accountable on what they do. When they interfere into our fundamental rights, there is a system of checks and balances there, as unsatisfactory and as insufficient as we may think it is, but there is something there which is actually very important and that will be increasingly important. I come back to the question of effective remedies. Yes, you inform people about their rights, but how can they have access to those rights and freedoms? What are the mechanisms in their hands when they think their rights have been violated to seek redress and solutions? The question of values and culture is a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. What are those values? What are those cultures? Who has the ownership of that definition? Should we have a definition of what those Europe's values are? Should we have a definition of what Europe's culture is? Perhaps this will take us to a route of exclusion again. Because if we have a predefined set of Europe's of values, by definition you will have also, or you will identify some people who do not share those values. So it is a tricky enterprise. European identity, the same. What does it mean to be European? Someone mentioned before. I think that the answer to those questions of values and principles, we need to come back to fundamental rights, fundamental human rights and freedoms, which apply to everyone, and which everyone needs to comply with. Not only migrants, for example. There is this tendency of saying, oh, migrants do not comply with Europe's values. But I think this is a very also misleading discourse, because fundamental human rights, the respect of those fundamental human rights, is for everyone in society, including our executives. So it is a question of legitimacy. It will be a question of legitimacy of further EU action, whatever the direction that is. But I think it is also the main challenge will be how to transmit that indeed Europe and national member states are doing something as regards their own values in terms of delivering these guarantees, democratic guarantees and rule of law and fundamental rights principles that they've sought to develop and build. And it should be the individual at the heart of it. Of course, I think it's come across several of the contributions today. It seems obvious that it should be the individual, but it is not the individual. The individual is not yet at the heart or as central as it should be in certain European policy debates. I will leave it there. Thank you.